All right, hey, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, we are back taking a look at the tropics. Tonight is Tuesday, August 17th, 2021. This is your late evening tropical update. We're going to quickly hit Tropical Storm Grace and Tropical Storm Henri this evening now that we have Fred inland and kind of out of our hair. Remains a flooding threat through parts of the Carolinas today where heavy rain fell. There was some tornadoes in the Carolinas as well. I think it was a pretty rough day as Fred moved inland and what we were hoping to avoid. But definitely need to remember to definitely respect these remnant tropical systems as they move inland. They are definitely no joke, well away from where they make landfall. But we still do have two active tropical storms. Again, Tropical Storm Grace, located near Jamaica, moving away and probably about to undergo an intensification phase as she moves towards the Yucatan Peninsula. And we also have Tropical Storm Henri tonight, south of Bermuda. And forecasts are becoming a little muddier with this storm. And folks in the New England area probably want to keep an eye on this one, and we'll explain why in just a minute. But let's go ahead and get into the latest on Grace. Evening update from the National Hurricane Center is 8 p.m. Those maximum stand winds now have increased to 60 miles an hour, and you can see now hurricane warnings in effect for parts of Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, where she is scheduled to make landfall just after midnight on Thursday. Hurricane watch is also up for the Cayman Islands. Tropical storm warnings up for Jamaica, the Cayman Islands, and parts of Cuba for at least a couple more hours as Grace moves through here, but should be clear by tomorrow afternoon. So the latest in the recon data from the hurricane hunters is that Grace is getting stronger. They have made a few passes through the storm, and they can see the pressure is falling a little bit, not rapidly by any means. So this has been three separate passes, but they are finding stronger winds aloft. There's a belt of on the northeast side of the storm, a belt of pretty strong winds, 55 to 65 knots. So definitely getting up there in tropical storm speed, and these winds will probably begin to wrap around the north and eventually the west side of the storm in the next day or so. Satellite presentation tonight of Grace shows that an inner core may be starting to form. It's still a little bit ragged. This part of the storm still has some wind shear and a little bit of drier air. It looks like maybe impinging on it. But overall, Grace's structure is much more improved than it was yesterday. The water vapor imagery shows fantastic cirrus outflow in a couple different quadrants. And what is left of this little trough is still kind of impinging on it. You saw some of this flow kind of coming in. It's definitely not perfect for Grace, but it's a lot better than it was yesterday. And now that her inflow is not restricted by the mountains of Haiti and Dominican Republic and the mountains of eastern Cuba nearly as much, the storm is breathing a lot better. It's pulling a lot more moisture and heat off the ocean, and it's really allowing the storm to take off. So we can show the GFS model. It kind of depicts how this might play out, and it looks like intensification is on its way. Relative humidity, 700 millibar winds, a relative humidity model showing the future of Grace with the sea level pressure. So 999 millibars. That's just a hair over what she's actually at right now, but the GFS got it pretty close. And as we go through the next couple days, you can see near the landfall location early on Thursday, central pressure 980 millibars. That's a 20 millibar drop, well into intensification, probably into rapid. I don't remember off the top of my head. I should know that, but been a little while since we had a rapid intensifier. I got to brush off on that, but it is no doubt pretty quick intensification where Grace will likely be probably Category 1, Category 2 hurricane. I mean, she'd definitely be a decent hurricane, and the only thing that might limit that is some dry air. You can see the GFS does forecast a lot of dry air around the system in the Gulf of Mexico, and there's going to be a little bit of wind shear, not a ton, but you still have this kind of upper high cell that's over the Gulf of Mexico, and this is still imparting that north to northeast flow over the storm. So that's going to still impinge on a little bit. It's the same flow that you generally see in this belt right here around Florida. And this is going to pretty much stay with the storm as she moves into the Yucatan. But, she'll move over the Yucatan on Thursday. Likely will weaken. GFS picks her back 997, but then another pretty quick intensification phase, and even possibly more explosive intensification over the southern Gulf of Mexico in the Bay of Campeche. And it looks like that is aided because wind shear looks like it'll abate some more in this part. So while this side of the Yucatan has some dry air, some wind shear, this side looks even less dry air and even less wind shear, so a strong hurricane likely to strike somewhere in mainland Mexico later this week, where it looks like Friday, Saturday should be the landfall for that. And no problems with any water temperatures or whatnot. This is 30, 31 degrees Celsius water, which is 86 to 89 degrees Fahrenheit. And the oceanic heat content, especially in the Western Caribbean, is pretty much off the charts, as it usually is. So this is where we see some of the strongest hurricanes in Atlantic Basin, history. If you look back at where the strongest ones were when they were that strong, mostly it's in this region. So while Grace won't be that strong, she's going to definitely get herself going. And folks in Mexico from the Yucatan to the mainland south of Texas need to keep an eye on this. But right now, excellent model agreement that this storm will stay well south of Texas. So I think folks in there, even South Texas, can probably go ahead and breathe a sigh of relief and let your guard down because there really just aren't a lot of worlds where this thing can get that far north. Ensemble members for the GFS and Euro look like they're good, and the computer models for the global models for the hurricane models have been holding pretty steady as well. Looks like high pressure just steers us right into Mexico, and it shouldn't be a problem for the U.S. One storm that may be a problem for the U.S., though, is a tropical storm Henri south of Bermuda today. So this storm has changed a little bit. Yesterday when we talked, this storm was being pushed to the south pretty good. You had a low level circulation and then kind of a mid level circulation that was getting pushed off by wind shear, and it was tilted to the south pretty heavily. Well, today Henri has righted the ship. It has a circulation center much closer to the actual thunderstorm activity, and the storm has intensified some as a result. Winds are now 65 miles an hour, quickly increasing, and Henri is also on his way to becoming a hurricane. He's over abnormally warm water near Bermuda, so in this region right here, 29, 30 degrees Celsius water, and pretty good humidity values are offsetting that wind shear that's still sort of pushing on the storm from the north. You can see the extent of the cirrus clouds is kind of getting squished a little bit, but otherwise outflow in these directions are all pretty decent. It's got some good inflow, so definitely a storm that is on its way up as well. And tropical storm watch remains in effect for Bermuda, but so far it really hasn't produced a lot of weather there, just some breezy conditions. So we can kind of use the GFS to show you what's going on. So generally, this westward motion is not expected to continue for a couple days. The steering flow that was pushing Henri to the south is kind of weakened for now, and it is mostly going to start this westward motion for a couple of days. The GFS kind of shows this pretty well. If we take an average sounding on early Thursday, we can see here that there's a couple different steering flows. You have an upper steering flow that's kind of strong out of the north and east, and even through the mid levels. But then as you go down, the steering flow switches out of the south. So the problem we're having is if Henri was weakening as we thought he was supposed to be now, or would be weakening sooner than later, then we were thinking the system could begin to turn early, as a hurricane center still kind of shows, and then moving out and up. But now we're thinking, well, wait a minute, this thing is pretty strong, and again, there's that northerly shear, but the warm water and the high relative humidity is kind of offsetting it. So the storm is intensifying in spite of the shear. A stronger Henri is going to want to kind of wander further south and really further west, and that's the problem we're having, is if this thing gets too south and too west before it begins to turn, it's putting parts of the New England region on notice for, hey, you might have a storm coming closer than you want. Because as long as he stayed in this cone right now in the Hurricane Center's forecast, it wouldn't really be a big deal. But if he starts wandering back to the west too far, it's going to be a problem. The GFS does show this evolution fairly well. Going back to the same model earlier, you can see that it is forecasting some weakening. So the big kind of rub here is basically what's happening right now is high pressure is centered over Florida and kind of extending up into most of the Carolinas and the upper levels, and you kind of have this flow out of the north. Well, Henri is down here right now, so it's kind of right on the edge of that stronger winds aloft, and you can see kind of the edge of the wind shear is basically right here. It's starting to squish this cloud line a little bit, but it's not really all that strong on the storm like it was yesterday. But in the coming days, we expect this to pick up as we go into Thursday morning. This more north to northeast flow is still trying to push Henri southward, and the GFS also shows the storm potentially becoming decoupled again, where the GFS shows the mid-level circulation down here where the greens are, and the surface circulation over here a little bit. So it's forecasting a much weaker Henri than what it currently looks like will be here in a couple days, and that is the problem, that the models continue to play catch up with the storm that is becoming stronger and is sort of doing what the models don't think it's going to do. So that's why the GFS still shows us, but by tomorrow the GFS may catch up and go, oh, never mind, it's going to be a hurricane here, and it's going to be even further west than we thought before it begins to turn. So late in the week, what's going to happen, this is valid for Saturday morning, so Henri has begun that turn northward on the GFS here. I'm just showing the overall evolution. It's pretty messed up. There's going to be an upper low over the Great Lakes region that's going to start trying to scoop the storm upward with it. But this low kind of fizzles out, and then a high pressure kind of builds in over Maine, and you kind of have this weird leftover thing where Henri turns, gets picked up, but then instead of being carried off, instead it just kind of comes up, and then it's like, oh, and then it kind of the steering flow kind of collapses, and then it just kind of gets slingshotted northward. And the question is, okay, well, is it too close to land now? Is it a little bit further off? We don't really know yet, and that's really going to depend on the next couple of days. But I think the bottom line is if Henri continues to sort of defy expectations, and it is a hurricane sooner than we think, it may come a little bit closer. Now, I mean, is it going to come straight all the way into the eastern and southeast U.S.? I mean, probably not, no. But it may take longer. It may wind up closer to the Outer Banks before it begins that turn, and then how much does it get turned before it moves up? And so, folks, especially the ones that stick out here, like New Jersey, New York, Massachusetts. I mean, there's a couple different areas that make it this thing closer than they want it, and it may also just stay offshore. The computer models, this morning we're showing this, offshore, no problem, don't worry about it. But then the evening computer model runs, the 0Z runs that just came out tonight, are now showing that closer track for some of them. And the European and GFS ensembles also show this. Again, both of these ensembles, the brighter colors you see are stronger guesses. Like the storm is stronger on that particular guess. This is like showing you 30 guesses of the model at the same time, where all the guesses that are stronger wind up a little bit closer to land. Same thing with the GFS. All the bright colors are on the left side or the west side of the mean track. So the bottom line for this is just keep a close eye on it. It's a little early to be running for the hills or hitting the panic button, but it is starting to get a little dicey, and I think forecasts probably aren't done shifting to the west with Henri, and it may get a little closer than we want. So keep a close eye on that in the New England area, but you got a couple more days to watch it. Weekend is where those impacts are, and Grace rather, going to move into the Yucatan and into Mexico. Problem for them, no problem for the eastern U.S. And looks like the tropics are probably going to stay a bit more quiet for the next couple of days. You got some Saharan dust that's coming off. You got one wave that looks kind of, maybe decent or whatever. We'll see how it comes off. But probably not going to be too favorable in the MDR for another week, week and a half. So it may be getting closer to September before we pick things back up. So anyway, guys, what I got for you this evening on your tropical update. As always, thanks for watching and have a good one.